Humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sankaran, Guru Piranyo, fellow Nyanis. Today I'm going to continue with Mahan's initiation method. As you know, Mahan's Kundalini meditation technique has 3 stages. The rising, the Kundalini stage, the descending step, and the cleansing step. I've spoken about the first 2. I'll just give a quick summary of it. So, the rising step is known as the first Upadesha, which is rising, and I spoke about this on how Swamiji, perfected the technique of raising the Kundalini, and through a lot of intensive research and introspection, he was able to discover this first step. You'll be able to get a more detailed explanation in the previous satsang. So this is Swamiji's first step, and we showed what are the benefits of this first step on parts of the brain that actually are stimulated. The parts that are in red color are the ones that are stimulated during this practice. I'll come back again and discuss this. So there is a physiological change that happens in the brain that, neurotransmitters, our frontal lobe or prefrontal cortex, pituitary gland, the brainstem, the spinal cord, all are kind of fired up. And so we see that a lot of, electromagnetic forces are generated through this practice. And you see that it has got tremendous impact. As I said, the neurotransmitters are our chemical messengers. It improves our cognitive ability. It helps us with rational thinking and a whole host of things that I discussed the last time. So this is the first stage. Then we spoke about the second stage, how Swamiji developed this technique to bring it down. And this bringing it down has also tremendous benefits. The first stage helps us with concentration, awareness. The second stage essentially is the energy after 2 weeks of practice, 14 days of practicing of the first stage. The second stage is done to bring that energy back to that Muladhara or the base eye. So this is practice for 6 days, and you get certain sensation as water descending a thread, ant movement. This is electromagnetic field. You get a slight pressure at the waist area, and you see that this has got tremendous benefit too. It has an impact on parts of the brain, particularly the neurotransmitters are reinforced because it's the pathway that are re-energized as it is brought down. It helps to strengthen our brainstem and our spinal cord. The energy flow is now flowing through the spinal cord, and we see that the body becomes more alert, more healthy. You become more rejuvenated. All the kind of, sometimes you get headache, migraine, it all subsides. And more importantly, whenever we are not well, the body is not well, when you practice this second stage, the body will heal very quickly because of the flow of the energy field. So I've spoken about this in the last satsang. And we showed that, how this the Upadesha actually, enables the flow of this energy, improves our health. We get greater awareness. The body chemistry starts changing, and you see that the body starts emanating kind of a radiance that we showed. And you see that most people, our whole body is actually electromagnetic field. And oftentimes, because of the state of our mind, because the state of all the engagements and the interactions, sometimes the energy field is kind of all over, not harmonized. So this practice helps us to have a more focused, more harmonized energy field. And that protects the body, keeps the body healthy, and more importantly, the body, the brain, the mind, the intellect all becomes more nourished. So we see this, we say that, the tejas, the glow, we can actually see our own glow in when you wake up, when you practice, you can see that glow in our face and in our bodily experience, that kind of rejuvenation that one experiences. So I covered this in more detail in the last satsang. I want to then cover today the third stage, and this is the Mahan's third stage, which is called the cleansing step, which Swamiji talks about, and this is the final step that Swamiji shows on how the first step is stage one. He brings it up to the third eye, brings the awareness, parts of the brain is fired up. But as he's doing that, he actually ignites the entire neurotransmitters in the spinal cord, as you see. And then second stage, he brings it down back, right? So the passageway now becomes more like a highway, right? And then in the third stage, he brings it back up to the third eye and then brings it back there to the crest eye. So to do this, a few things that he does, and only a guru who's an experienced guru can do this. Not everybody does this, see? So normally you sit on a uniform floor, okay? And then the guru stands about 8 feet from the disciple and he gazes. And the guru, who's an experienced guru, knows how to do this. And in this, he gazes into the eyes of the disciple without winking, right? So there's no winking. And it's a way that the guru actually transmits that energy to the disciple to calm down the mind. And there's a lot of noise in the mind. The guru shows how through the guru's observation and sight, it brings that noise down without that winking, non-winking. They can't wink. The gaze of the guru essentially kind of helps the mind become more calmer. And you see that the guru stands about 1 feet, on 1 feet, and he transmits that energy as shown in this picture through the crest eye. The guru must be very strong and powerful to be able to do this. One may ask why the guru stands on one leg. It is because the two legs, the energy that is coming up becomes dissipated. So when guru stands on 1 feet, it becomes more focused, more concentrated energy is passed to the disciple through the touch of the guru, as what Mahan is showing. And then the guru does the clockwise circles, kind of a swirling feeling for males and anti-clockwise for women. And you see that sometimes saints have this kind of circular motion, and that's actually the kind of, somewhat like electromagnetic field, like the North Pole that you see the circular flow. So we see that part of our, the crest eye is very important because these are part of the electromagnetic field. And you see that when a child is born, that part is not closed and there is, vibration. There's a kind of a fluttering. And over time, the skull closes, right? But still there are some, cracks between there that, you get that energy flow that the guru passes and there are nerves running. So the guru teaches how, so when you concentrate there through the practice, as how Mahan shows, you start feeling that nerves twinkling, percolating, and you can feel the flow of that energy. So in that point, the guru then drops, a drop of water on the top, and you see that you get a cooling sensation. Suddenly you get a cooling sensation. So it becomes more profound, that cooling sensation. It has got several effects because when one practices meditation, you see that the body temperature goes up. It's a way to cool down the body, but also that cooling sensation gives greater awareness of that force, that swirling force. And that has a very interesting impact on our body it actually stimulates an important gland in our body, which is the pineal gland, right? And it releases hormones that actually gives us a more relaxing, calming, cooling feeling. So for most ordinary people, they are kind of always in a state of flux, in a state of turbulence. And when you practice this, you see that it releases hormones that gives you a more calmer and cooler feeling. And as you practice over time, you feel a kind of a sense of serenity, a sense of quietude, a sense of peaceful awareness is experienced. And you get a kind of a nice feeling. Swamiji says sandosa nala, the kind of a glad feeling. And the mind becomes very quiet and you can feel that resonation of the life force. Right now, the mind starts anchoring on that. So you see that you start getting that universal experiences of that, what they call the blissful experience. And you see something very interesting happens, that when that is awakened, when that part becomes more kind of sensitive to vibrations, because the mind has become more quiet. When you listen to music or pleasant conversations or nice experiences, that starts fluttering. So you see that this third stage enables us to awaken part of our brain, at the top eye, which has got very important, sensory, sensation and sensory, the neurotransmitters that actually starts transmitting information. So you can feel a more profound feeling. And one can ask, well, it's electromagnetic feeling, it's more magnified. What it does actually is very interesting. It neutralizes, it helps the mind to anchor on that vibration so that the mind doesn't get distracted to other thoughts. So it's another way of creating that optional thought. And when that happens, something very profound happens to the brain. So it's a kind of another way of giving giving the mind to be able to experience that life force in this form of a resonation, all the vibration that is starting to percolate at that top part. So you kind of get a kind of a blissful feeling because you're not tormented by many other thoughts and experiences, including time itself, starts slowing down. And eventually, you don't experience space and time and you get that universal experience. There are many scientific studies that shows that when you practice that intensive meditation, when this part is fully ignited, you see that interconnection between the left and the right hemisphere becomes more stronger, and you see that there's a part which gives us the experience of space and time starts changing, or what we call warping. And you see that you get that space-time continuum starts to change, that you become transcendental to space and time. So when that experience has been, most meditators will say, actually, uh, I don't feel space and time, and you get a kind of a glimpses of the transcendentality. And that gives you a kind of an amazing experience, a blissful experience, that you're not touched by space and time. So we see this, that great meditators, when they practice this meditation, they said they have this experience. They just lose track of time and space, and they get into this blissful space. And this is what this third stage of meditation that Swamiji has taught has enabled many people, and including myself, to experience this kind of blissful experience. What are the benefits of this? There are, as I said, all the practice has got blissful experiences, and you see that the red areas are the areas that are fired up. It fires up. You see that the neurotransmitters become more, intensified. Particularly, the tentacles become more stronger and connected. The two parts of the brains become more interconnected because the neurotransmitters now start stretching and interconnecting. Parts of your brain starts interconnecting, and you start seeing that the networks become stronger. and the parts of the brain, particularly the third stage, it starts interconnecting all the other parts. So it's like a network, and you start feeling this blissful experiences. So the one thing that happens is actually, of course, you become more calmer, more peaceful. The bandwidth of your brain intensified because it's not wasting its energy on all the other frivolous thoughts. You see that it, once the brain starts recalibrating and the bandwidth increases, you see that all your sensory organs become more refined. Things that you could not hear, now you can hear, very subtle things. Things that you could not see, it becomes more clearer. The experiences become more magnified and more profound. So this is something that we see when you start practicing that the third stage. Of course, it connects to everything else. Remember, the first stage opens up and fires up certain parts of the brain. The second stage, the whole connectivity to the body, and the third stage actually starts, giving us a more universal experience. And I just want to focus today on the third stage, but in the next phase, I'll show when all three are combined, the fusion is really a kind of a amazing, blissful experience. So what we see here is that, as I said earlier, that the connectivity becomes more stronger, and the central part, the core, becomes more intensified, more focused. Earlier, it's all dissipated because a lot of noise in the brain. It becomes more centralized and focused. And you see that the central core brings the two hemispheres together. And each of the hemisphere has its own function. And what we see here is that the flow becomes more seamless. So we see, we experience, before, although they have their own functions, but now the interconnectivity becomes more stronger because the central core becomes more intensified because of that third stage practice, and there are all interconnectivity between the different parts of the brain. So, you start seeing the right hemisphere has just got important functions. You get a more infinite experience. I mean, it's transcendental to space and time. You become more universal in your outlook. You start searching for deeper meanings, a search for, not just the material things, but more spiritual realm. So the mind starts, getting into a more deeper levels of frequency, more exploring its own inner being, become more curious, become more carefree. You can connect to things easier, and you have a very good spatial perception of things, right? On where things are, how things are related. You have a pretty good understanding of the universe that we live in. In that same way, the left hemisphere gives you a more kind of a logical analysis, a scientific, but also pragmatic way. So both that spiritual realm and the material realm, which the brain is starting to calibrate, becomes more and more harmonized. And this is the part that Swamiji talks about, that எட்டாத தத்பரத்தை எட்டி எட்டி உட்புறமாய் உற்று உற்று நோக்க நோக்க இப்பரமும் அப்புறமும் ஏக பராபரமும் என்னும் நான் அறிந்தேன். So this experience of that external cosmos and the internal cosmos starts converging. And you see that the brain is able to make sense of this material reality and the spiritual realm. And you see both are interconnected, and you don't see separation between your material being and your spiritual being. So there's a convergence that takes place from the perspective of the small I identity that we have as a material personality, and the bigger I, which is something far greater than our own biology. So this is where you see that the third stage actually brings that universal experience of that spiritual self. It doesn't happen immediately, but over time, you see that the mind starts evolving and getting to frequencies that an ordinary human mind would not. So you get a much more peaceful, but also it enhances your material experiences, your thinking process, the unconditional love, you're able to make decisions in a better way. Your ability to connect to the spiritual realm and the infinite possibility gives you a much more profound, command of the vocabulary, the language, able to articulate. And for some people who meditate, they may be articulating, like, see, Swamiji was telling, look, he never went to university, but suddenly, he was speaking about, the proverbs and the way he was expressing the world he was living in, the universe he was living in. We saw that also with Rumi, who was now expressing the universe in beautiful words and poetry. We see that with musicians that get into the realm that are able to compose wonderful music, poets, musicians, mathematicians. So when one gets into this realm, new dimensions starts opening up, right? A much more, profound experience of this, the creator, the creation, and the self. It's a convergence that takes place. And this is what we see that, as Mahan's teachings teaches us. And when we practice this over time, the first stage, second stage, third stage really fires up the brain and prepares the brain so that the hardware is able to help the software called the mind to expand its horizon beyond its own biology. It becomes transcendental and more universal. And you can see this in the words of Mahan, in the words of great meditators who are poets, musicians, mathematicians, scientists, and also, my own personal experience of practicing this. It opened up enormous dimensions that otherwise I would not have, and it helped me in my own research work as a researcher, as a scholar, as a scientist, as a guru, as a person who's also trying to explore Mahan's teachings and all the other teachings of the Upanishad. What was very difficult to understand now became so clear and simple. And this is only possible because of this three stages of practice that Mahan showed. And if you do the same thing, doesn't matter which station you are in your life or which stages of your life, the kind of job you hold, the kind of circumstance you are in, if you practice this meditation diligently, you see that you are able to really create a profound, transformation of the brain and the mind and the intellect and your own life, and we see this, documented, by great people that have became fantastic, they contributed significantly to society, to themselves, and the community that they live in. And I hope that this third stage that I spoke about gives you better understanding of what, why, how, what is the impact that this practice has on our own spiritual journey. And in the next class, I'll bring all the three together and what happens to a mind that is practicing stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 very well. And how would that mind look like? How would that mind cognize the world? And what are the kind of profound impact that it'll have in our own lives? Santosham.